Chapter 1. A Chance Encounter in the Wasteland. The twin suns of Valthoria blazed relentlessly overhead, their heat radiating through the cracked, arid landscape. Jagged cliffs and scorched plains stretched as far as the eye could see, interrupted only by the occasional gnarled tree or thorny bush. Dust devils swirled lazily in the distance, and the silence was oppressive, broken only by the crunch of boots on gravel and the faint hum of a utility drone. Commander Elias Eli Grayson paused to adjust the straps of his gear pack, the weight of his equipment pressing heavily on his shoulders. His rifle hung securely at his side, a precaution more than a necessity. Valthoria's surface was largely uninhabited, but the colonists' stories of strange, elusive predators kept him vigilant. "Pix, give me an update," Eli muttered, his voice cutting through the stillness. The drone, a sleek sphere no larger than a basketball, hovered closer. Its interface flickered as it relayed data to Eli's wrist console. "Commander, resource scans within a 5-kilometer radius have yielded negligible results. Terrain analysis suggests a 72% probability of encountering geothermal activity within the next 6 kilometers. "Great," Eli sighed, wiping sweat from his brow. "Another bust. Let's keep moving." Valthoria was humanity's latest frontier, an unclaimed world with harsh conditions but vast potential for colonization. Eli's task was to scout its unexplored regions, identifying resources or threats that could impact settlement plans. It was a lonely job, but Eli was used to solitude. After a decade in the military and another 5 years as a freelance explorer, he'd learned to rely on himself and his wits. As he trudged forward, the harsh wind shifted, carrying with it a faint, plaintive sound. Eli stopped in his tracks, his sharp green eyes scanning the horizon. The sound came again, a weak, high-pitched whimper, almost drowned out by the wind. "Pix, did you hear that?" Eli asked, his voice low. "Affirmative," the drone responded, its sensors swiveling. "Audio anomaly detected. Source located approximately 200 meters east." Eli adjusted his trajectory, his boots crunching against the parched ground as he approached the source of the noise. Nestled against the base of a jagged rock formation was a small, huddled figure. At first glance, it looked like an animal. Its fur was patchy and matted, its body frail and trembling. Eli crouched a few meters away, his hand resting on the grip of his rifle. He studied the creature carefully. It was unlike anything he'd seen before, roughly the size of a large dog, with elongated limbs and a tail that curled protectively around its body. Its fur shimmered faintly in the sunlight, catching iridescent hues of blue and violet. "It's injured," Eli murmured, noting the deep gash along the creature's flank. Blood, thick and dark, oozed from the wound, staining the dusty ground beneath it. "Commander," Pix interjected, "the creature is displaying signs of severe distress. Recommend maintaining a safe distance." Eli ignored the warning, his instincts kicking in. He'd seen his share of injured animals during his deployments on frontier worlds. Most were terrified and prone to lashing out, but he couldn't bring himself to walk away. This creature, whatever it was, seemed too weak to pose a threat. "Hey there," he said softly, lowering himself further. He kept his movements slow and deliberate, his voice calm. "Easy now. I'm not going to hurt you." The creature's eyes, large, oval-shaped, and a deep shade of amethyst, opened slightly, meeting his gaze. There was intelligence in those eyes, a flicker of awareness that made Eli's breath catch. Carefully, he reached for his pack and retrieved a water flask. He poured a small amount into his hand and held it out. "Here, you look like you could use this." The creature hesitated, its ears twitching as it sniffed the air. Slowly, it extended its long, slender neck and lapped at the water with a delicate, forked tongue. Eli smiled faintly, relief washing over him. "That's it," he murmured. "You're going to be okay." As the creature drank, Eli took the opportunity to examine its wound more closely. The gash was deep but clean, likely caused by the sharp rocks scattered across the landscape. He reached for his medkit, pulling out a vial of antiseptic and a roll of gauze. "This might sting a little," he warned, holding up the antiseptic. The creature let out a low, trembling whine but didn't resist as he applied the solution to its wound. Its amethyst eyes remained locked on his, filled with a mixture of pain and trust. Eli worked quickly, cleaning and bandaging the injury with practiced efficiency. As he finished, the creature let out a soft, melodic trilla sound that sent a strange warmth through him. Pix hovered closer, its scanners whirring. "Commander, this behavior is highly unusual. The creature appears to be exhibiting gratitude." Eli chuckled, brushing a hand through his sweat-dampened hair. "You think? Smart little thing, aren't you?" He sat back, watching as the creature settled against the rock, its breathing steadying. For the first time since arriving on Valthoria, Eli felt a sense of accomplishment. Out here, surrounded by the harsh, unforgiving landscape, he'd made a connection, however small, with another living being. But his moment of respite was short-lived. The wind shifted again, carrying with it a new sound, a deep, guttural growl that made the hairs on the back of Eli's neck stand on end. He rose to his feet, his hand instinctively reaching for his rifle. "Pix, scan the area." "Hostile presence detected," the drone reported. "Large predator approaching from the north." Eli's grip tightened on his weapon as a massive shadow emerged from the rocks. The creature, a hulking, reptilian beast with razor-sharp teeth and gleaming scales, let out a deafening roar. It was easily twice his size, its eyes glowing with primal hunger. The injured animal at Eli's feet let out a terrified cry, pressing itself against the ground. Eli stepped in front of it, raising his rifle. "Not today," he muttered, aiming for the predator's chest. He fired a burst of plasma rounds, the shots striking the creature's armored hide and eliciting an enraged snarl. The predator charged, its massive claws tearing into the ground. Eli stood his ground, his heart pounding as he fired again, aiming for the creature's vulnerable joints. The beast staggered but didn't stop, its determination as fierce as its size. "Pix, a little help here," Eli shouted, his voice strained. The drone buzzed into action, deploying a series of flashing decoys that disoriented the predator. Taking advantage of the distraction, Eli switched his rifle to high-power mode and fired a single, precise shot. The plasma bolt struck the beast's exposed underbelly, piercing its thick hide. With a final, guttural roar, the predator collapsed, its massive body kicking up a cloud of dust as it hit the ground. Eli lowered his rifle, his breathing heavy. "Commander," Pix said, its tone tinged with approval, threat neutralized. Eli turned back to the injured creature, which was staring at him with wide, awe-filled eyes. It let out another melodic trill, its tail uncurling slightly as it regarded him with what could only be described as gratitude. "You're safe now," Eli said softly, crouching beside it. "Let's get you out of here." As he reached for his pack, a faint, ethereal glow began to emanate from the creature's body. Eli froze, his eyes widening as the glow intensified, enveloping the animal in a cocoon of shimmering light. "What the hell?" he muttered, shielding his eyes. When the light faded, the creature was gone. In its place was a young woman, her form slender and graceful, her skin shimmering with the same iridescent hues as the animal's fur. Her amethyst eyes met his, filled with both curiosity and vulnerability. Eli stared, his mind racing to process what he was seeing. "You've got to be kidding me." The woman tilted her head, her voice soft and melodic. "You saved me." Chapter 2. Unveiled Truths. Eli blinked several times, his mind racing to comprehend what he was seeing. The injured animal he had just patched up had vanished, replaced by a young woman of striking, otherworldly beauty. Her slender form shimmered faintly in the sunlight, her skin a soft, iridescent hue that shifted with the light. She looked fragile yet powerful, her amethyst eyes locking onto his with an unsettling intensity. "You saved me," she repeated, her voice melodic, almost musical. Eli's grip on his rifle tightened instinctively, his training kicking in. What are you?" The woman took a tentative step forward, her movements graceful and deliberate. Her shimmering hair fell over her shoulders like liquid silver, cascading to her waist. She glanced at her hands, flexing her fingers as if testing their mobility. "I am Alara," she said, her voice hesitant. She looked up at him again, her expression softening. "And I owe you my life." Eli took a step back, his eyes narrowing. "Alara? You were the animal. How is this possible?" She tilted her head, her expression curious. Not an animal. My true form was concealed. A survival instinct. My kind shifts to evade detection when we are gravely injured. Shifts, Eli repeated, struggling to process the revelation. You're telling me you're some kind of shapeshifter? Alara nodded, her gaze unwavering. In a way, yes. But I am more than that. I am one of the Alarian people bound to this world. We possess the ability to adapt, to survive in the harshest conditions. What you saw before was a fragment of who I am. Eli exhaled slowly, lowering his rifle but keeping his guard up. All right, Alara. Let's say I believe you. Why were you out here alone? What happened to you? Her expression darkened, her glowing skin dimming slightly. I was hunted. My village was destroyed by invaders offworlders who sought to claim our land and resources. My people fought back, but we were overwhelmed. I fled, hoping to find safety in the wastelands. Eli frowned, a pang of guilt stirring in his chest. Humanity's colonization efforts had often clashed with native populations on other planets. Though his mission on Valthoria was exploratory, he couldn't dismiss the possibility that his own people were part of the problem. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I didn't know. Alara's gaze softened, her posture relaxing. You are different. You showed mercy. You could have left me to die, yet you stayed. Eli shifted uncomfortably and used to such praise. I was just doing what anyone would do. Not anyone, Alara said, her voice firm. Many would have seen only a wounded beast. You saw more. Eli rubbed the back of his neck, unsure how to respond. Well, you're welcome, I guess. But now what? You can't stay out here. That predator wasn't the only danger in these wastelands. Alara nodded, her expression determined. I need to reach the sanctuary, an ancient stronghold hidden deep within the mountains. It is the last refuge of my people. If I can reach it, I may find others who survived. Eli hesitated, his instincts screaming at him to turn back and report his findings to the colony. But something about Alara's plight tugged at him, a sense of responsibility he couldn't ignore. I'll help you, he said finally, at least until you get to the sanctuary. Alara's eyes widened, a faint glow returning to her skin. You would do that? For me? Eli nodded. It's the least I can do. Besides, you're in no shape to make the journey alone. She smiled, the gesture lighting up her face. Thank you, Eli. I will not forget your kindness. A perilous journey. The trek toward the mountains was grueling. The arid landscape offered little in the way of shelter, and the twin suns made every step feel like a battle against exhaustion. Alara moved with surprising grace despite her injuries, her natural resilience evident in the way she adapted to their surroundings. Eli kept a watchful eye on her, noting how she seemed attuned to the environment. She could sense danger before it appeared, guiding them around potential threats and finding hidden water sources where he saw only barren land. You've done this before, he remarked as they paused near a narrow canyon to rest. Alara nodded, her amethyst eyes scanning the horizon. The land speaks to those who listen. My people have always been connected to it, though we rarely venture this far from our villages. Eli leaned against a rock, wiping sweat from his brow. You said offworlders attacked your village. Who were they? Alara's expression darkened, her tone laced with bitterness. They called themselves the Syndicate. Raiders, mercenaries, they come to strip worlds of their resources, leaving nothing but ruin in their wake. They took everything from us. Eli clenched his fists, anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. The Syndicate was notorious for its predatory tactics, operating on the fringes of galactic law. Their raids often targeted vulnerable worlds, and Valthoria fit their profile perfectly. Do they know about the sanctuary? He asked. Alara shook her head. I don't think so. The sanctuary is hidden, protected by ancient technology. But if they find it... She trailed off, her eyes filled with worry. They won't, Eli said firmly. Not if we get there first. The hidden threat. As they approached the foothills of the mountains, the terrain grew more treacherous. Narrow paths wound through jagged cliffs, and the air grew cooler, offering some relief from the relentless heat. Alara moved ahead, her lithe form navigating the rocky terrain with ease. Eli followed closely, his rifle at the ready. The sense of unease that had been gnawing at him since their journey began grew stronger, a feeling that something or someone was watching them. "Pix, scan the area," he ordered. The drone buzzed to life, its sensors whirring. "Commander, multiple life forms detected. Approximately 300 meters west and closing." Eli's grip tightened on his weapon. "How many?" "Estimate 4 to 6 hostiles," Pix reported. "Human signatures confirmed." Alara's expression turned grim. "The Syndicate." Eli nodded, his voice steady. "Stay close. We'll deal with them if they get too close." The sound of footsteps and hushed voices reached them moments later, confirming Pix's report. Eli gestured for Alara to take cover behind a boulder, positioning himself in a defensible spot. He peered through his rifle's scope, spotting the raiders as they moved through the rocks. The Syndicate operatives were heavily armed, their armor a patchwork of scavenged materials. They moved with the confidence of seasoned predators, their weapons ready as they scanned the area. Eli exhaled slowly, his mind racing. He could take them out, but the risk of drawing more attention was high. He glanced at Alara, who crouched silently, her glowing skin blending with the rocky terrain. "Stay here," he whispered. "I'll handle this." Alara's eyes flashed with concern. "You can't take them alone." Eli smirked, his voice filled with quiet determination. "Watch me." Chapter 3. A Fight for Survival. Eli's boots crunched against the uneven, rocky terrain as he crept toward the Syndicate raiders. The faint metallic hum of their armor and the low murmurs of their conversation drifted through the narrow canyon, echoing ominously. The shadows of the towering cliffs offered some cover, but Eli knew he'd have to rely on more than stealth to get out of this situation alive. "Pix," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the wind. "Confirm hostiles." The utility drone, hovering silently above him, flickered as it processed the request. "Commander, 6 human signatures confirmed. Armed with plasma-based weaponry. Threat level, high." Eli clenched his jaw, his grip tightening on his rifle. The Syndicate was notorious for its brutality and greed. These weren't your run-of-the-mill scavengers, they were trained mercenaries who lived for blood and profit. He glanced back at Alara, who was hidden behind a large boulder, her iridescent form blending seamlessly with the surroundings. She met his gaze, her amethyst eyes glowing faintly. "You don't have to do this alone," she said softly, her voice barely carrying over the distance. Eli shook his head, his expression resolute. "Stay hidden. If they spot you, we're both dead." Alara hesitated, her lips pressing into a thin line. She nodded reluctantly, retreating further into the shadows. Eli turned back toward the raiders, exhaling slowly as he assessed the situation. He needed a plan, and he needed it fast. The ambush. The raiders moved in a loose formation, their patched armor and mismatched weapons giving them a ragtag appearance. But Eli wasn't fooled. The way they carried themselves, their confident strides and sharp, calculated glances told him everything he needed to know. These were seasoned killers. Eli activated the targeting module on his rifle, the display lighting up as it locked onto the nearest raider. He adjusted his position, ensuring he had a clear line of sight. The wind shifted, carrying with it the faint scent of ozone and metal, the unmistakable signature of plasma weaponry. "Pix," Eli murmured. "Deploy decoys 20 meters west." The drone responded instantly, zipping toward the designated location. Moments later, holographic projections flickered to life, mimicking the shapes of armed figures moving through the rocks. The raiders snapped to attention, their weapons raised as they honed in on the decoys. Targets identified. One of them barked, his voice sharp and commanding. "Fan out and engage." Eli watched as the group split up, 2 of them advancing toward the decoys while the others took up defensive positions. He waited until they were fully committed before making his move. His first shot was clean and precise, the plasma bolt striking the nearest raider square in the chest. The man crumpled to the ground, his weapon clattering against the rocks. Before the others could react, Eli fired again, taking down another target with a well-placed shot to the head. "Contact!" the leader shouted, his cybernetic eye glowing faintly as it scanned the area. "We've got a sniper." "Spread out." The remaining raiders scrambled for cover, their plasma rifles firing blindly into the shadows. Bright streaks of energy lit up the canyon, the air crackling with heat as the bolts struck the rocks around Eli. He ducked behind a boulder, his mind racing as he formulated his next move. Alara's intervention. From her hiding spot, Alara watched the battle unfold, her heart pounding. The Syndicate raiders were ruthless, their movements calculated and efficient. She could see the strain on Eli's face, the way his jaw tightened with every shot he fired. He was outnumbered, and despite his skill, she knew he couldn't hold them off forever. Her hands curled into fists, a surge of energy pulsing through her veins. She had been taught to avoid conflict, to hide and survive rather than fight. But watching Eli risk his life to protect her stirred something deep within her, a sense of responsibility she couldn't ignore. Alara closed her eyes, focusing on the energy that flowed through her body. It resonated with the environment, a natural force that her people had long learned to harness. When she opened her eyes, they glowed with a fierce light. She stepped out from behind the boulder, her iridescent form shimmering faintly in the shadows. Extending her hands, she sent a ripple of energy coursing through the air. The nearest raider staggered, clutching his head as the disorienting wave overwhelmed his senses. "What the hell?" another raider shouted, spinning around to face her. Alara moved with fluid grace, closing the distance between them in an instant. She struck with precision, her hand glowing as it connected with the man's chest. He collapsed to the ground, unconscious. Eli caught sight of her actions and felt a mix of awe and frustration. "Damn it, Alara. I told you to stay back." She turned to him, her expression calm but resolute. "You cannot do this alone. Let me help." Eli muttered a curse under his breath but didn't argue. He adjusted his position, firing another volley at the raiders as Alara moved to flank them. Together, they began to turn the tide of the battle. The final stand. The Syndicate leader growled in frustration, his cybernetic eye locking onto Alara. "Target acquired," he barked, raising a heavy plasma cannon. Eli saw the threat and acted without hesitation. He fired at the leader's weapon, the plasma bolt striking its power core. The cannon exploded in the raider's hands, sending him flying backward. The remaining raiders, seeing their leader incapacitated, began to retreat. One by one, they disappeared into the shadows, their shouts fading into the distance. Eli lowered his rifle, his breathing heavy as he surveyed the battlefield. The rocky terrain was littered with scorch marks and debris, the aftermath of the skirmish evident in the stillness that followed. Alara approached him, her movements graceful despite the exertion. "You fought well," she said softly, her glowing eyes meeting his. Eli shook his head, his expression a mix of irritation and relief. "You shouldn't have jumped in like that. You could have been killed." "I could not stand by and do nothing," Alara replied, her voice firm. "You risked your life to protect me. I could do no less." Eli sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Fair enough. But next time, let's try not to make a habit of fighting Syndicate raiders, all right?" Alara's lips curved into a faint smile. "Agreed." A new resolve. As they resumed their journey, the weight of the encounter lingered between them. The sanctuary was close, but the danger was far from over. Eli couldn't shake the feeling that the Syndicate would be back and in greater numbers. Alara walked beside him, her gaze steady despite the uncertainty ahead. "Eli," she said, her voice soft but determined, "thank you for everything." Eli glanced at her, his expression softening. "Don't mention it. We're in this together." Her smile was brief but genuine, a glimmer of hope in the harshness of their surroundings. For the first time since their journey began, they felt like more than allies, they felt like partners. The sanctuary awaited, but so did the unknown challenges that lay ahead. Together, they would face whatever came next. Chapter 4. The Sanctuary's Secrets. The jagged cliffs of the Valthorian Mountains loomed overhead, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch endlessly across the rocky terrain. Eli and Alara trudged forward, the weight of the Syndicate encounter still heavy on their minds. The air grew thinner and cooler as they ascended, and the oppressive heat of the wasteland gave way to a brisk chill. "This sanctuary," Eli began, his voice breaking the silence. "How secure is it? If the Syndicate decides to follow us?" Alara's glowing eyes flicked toward him, her expression calm but resolute. "The sanctuary is more than a place. It is alive, bound to my people's energy. If they do not know its secrets, they cannot breach it." Eli nodded but remained wary. He trusted Alara's confidence, yet he had learned long ago that no stronghold was impenetrable especially against enemies as ruthless and resourceful as the Syndicate. The hidden entrance. As they climbed higher, Alara paused, her gaze scanning the cliffside. The rock face appeared solid, unbroken by any visible path or opening. Yet her expression brightened as she approached a particular section, placing her hands gently against the stone. Eli watched as a soft, ethereal glow radiated from her fingertips, spreading across the rock in intricate patterns. The stone shimmered, then dissolved, revealing a narrow passageway carved into the mountainside. "Impressive," Eli murmured, stepping closer. "How does it work?" Alara smiled faintly. "The sanctuary responds only to those of my lineage. It recognizes our energy and grants passage." "And what about me?" Eli asked, raising an eyebrow. "You are with me," she replied simply, gesturing for him to follow. The passageway was dark and winding, illuminated only by the faint glow of Alara's presence. As they moved deeper into the mountain, the air grew warmer, and a sense of calm began to settle over them. Eli couldn't help but feel a strange, almost reverent energy permeating the space. "Your people built this?" he asked, his voice low. Alara nodded. "Long ago, before the invaders came. The sanctuary was meant to protect us from the storms that ravaged the surface. It became more than a refuge, it became part of us." A lost legacy. The passage opened into a vast chamber, its walls adorned with bioluminescent markings that pulsed gently in rhythmic patterns. The room was filled with ancient structures, pillars, and arches carved from the same glowing stone, their designs intricate and elegant. Pools of crystalline water dotted the space, their surfaces shimmering with an otherworldly light. Eli stared in awe, his breath catching in his throat. This is incredible." Alara's gaze swept across the chamber, a mix of pride and sorrow in her expression. "It is all that remains of my people's legacy. Once, these halls were filled with life. Now, they are silent." Eli stepped closer to one of the pools, kneeling to study its surface. "What happened here? Why didn't your people stay?" Alara's shoulders sagged, the weight of her memories evident in her posture. "The Syndicate's first attack was swift and brutal. They destroyed our villages and drove us from our lands. Many of us sought refuge here, but even the sanctuary could not protect us from starvation and disease." She paused, her voice trembling. "I was a child when my parents sent me away, hoping to find safer lands. When I returned years later, the sanctuary was empty." Eli frowned, his chest tightening. "I'm sorry, Alara." She met his gaze, her amethyst eyes glistening. "Do not pity me. My people's story is not over. If others survived, they may yet return." An unwelcome intrusion. Before Eli could respond, Pix buzzed to life, its sensors flashing red. "Commander, multiple life forms detected. Approaching rapidly from the passageway." Eli's heart sank. "The Syndicate. They must have followed us." Alara's expression hardened, her glow intensifying. "They cannot be allowed to desecrate this place." Eli readied his rifle, his mind racing. "How many?" "6 hostiles," Pix reported, armed and advancing quickly. Alara stepped forward, her energy radiating in pulsing waves. "I can activate the sanctuary's defenses, but it will take time. Can you hold them off?" Eli smirked, his rifle humming as it charged. "You're asking a guy who just fought 6 of these bastards in a canyon. I think I can manage." Alara gave him a brief, grateful nod before moving toward the central structure, her hands glowing as she began to interface with the sanctuary's systems. The final stand. Eli took cover behind a pillar as the first Syndicate raiders burst into the chamber, their plasma rifles blazing. He fired a volley of shots, his plasma bolts striking true and taking down 2 of the attackers before they could establish their positions. The remaining raiders spread out, their movements coordinated and precise. Eli ducked as a barrage of plasma fire impacted the pillar, showering him with fragments of glowing stone. "Pix, give me some light," he shouted. The drone deployed a series of flares, their bright bursts temporarily blinding the raiders. Eli used the distraction to reposition, firing at another target and dropping him with a clean headshot. 3 down, he muttered, his pulse racing. "Where's that defense system, Alara?" "Almost ready," she called, her voice strained. One of the raiders spotted her, and raised his weapon. Eli acted without hesitation, firing a shot that struck the attacker's arm and sent his rifle clattering to the ground. The raider snarled, clutching his wound as he retreated. The syndicate leader, a towering figure with a heavily augmented body, stepped forward, his cybernetic eye glowing ominously. "Enough games," he bellowed, leveling a massive plasma cannon at Eli. Eli dove for cover as the cannon fired, the blast obliterating the pillar he had been hiding behind. He rolled to his feet, his rifle up and ready, but the leader was already advancing, his heavy footsteps echoing through the chamber. The sanctuary awakens. At that moment, a deep hum resonated through the chamber. The bioluminescent markings on the walls flared brightly, their rhythmic patterns accelerating. Ilara stood at the central structure, her arms outstretched as the sanctuary's energy responded to her command. "Eli, move back," she shouted. He didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted toward her as the air around them crackled with energy. The raiders hesitated, their confusion evident as the sanctuary began to react. Glowing tendrils of light emerged from the walls and floor, weaving through the chamber like living entities. The syndicate leader roared in frustration, firing wildly at the tendrils. His shots were absorbed harmlessly, the energy growing stronger with each passing moment. "What is this?" he bellowed. Ilara's voice rang out, clear and commanding. "This sanctuary is not yours to desecrate. Leave, or face its wrath." The tendrils coiled around the remaining raiders, lifting them into the air. Their screams echoed through the chamber as the energy overwhelmed them, rendering them unconscious. The leader fought valiantly, but even his augmented strength was no match for the sanctuary's power. He fell to the ground, his body limp. The tendrils receded, leaving the chamber eerily silent once more. Ilara lowered her arms, her glow dimming as the energy settled. A new beginning. Eli approached her cautiously, his rifle still in hand. "Is it over?" Ilara nodded, her expression weary but resolute. "For now, the sanctuary's defenses will keep them out, but we cannot stay here forever." Eli glanced at the unconscious raiders, then back at her. "What's the plan?" Ilara's gaze softened. "We find the others. If there are still survivors of my people, we bring them home." Eli smiled faintly, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. "You're not doing it alone. I've got your back." Her eyes glistened with gratitude. "Thank you, Eli. Together, we will rebuild." As they stood in the heart of the sanctuary, surrounded by its ancient light, a sense of hope filled the air. Their journey was far from over, but for the first time, they faced the future not as strangers, but as partners.